Hey everyone, I am so glad you are here today to learn portrait editing. In this online workshop, you're going to learn the easy system for editing gorgeous portraits. Before I dive right into these editing video tutorials though, I want to make sure you're in the right place. I know that your time is really valuable and I want to make sure that you get the most out of today's online workshop. So you're in the right spot if what you're looking to do is increase your knowledge and understanding of portrait editing. You also have to have a good understanding and basic framework for taking photos already. You should also love to take pictures of your own kids, or you might even have your own portrait business, or you're thinking about starting one really soon. If that sounds like you, then you are in the right place for today's workshop. Now, throughout the workshop today, the editing videos are going to consist of the following programs. I work mostly with the Adobe Creative Cloud program, which includes Photoshop, Lightroom, ACR, and Bridge. If you're using one of those programs, that's going to help you get the most out of today's workshop. If you're using a different editing program, you may still find some value, but to get the most out of the workshop, these are the programs you're going to want to be utilizing. Now, I want to make sure you have the best experience possible during today's workshop. And for those of you who know me, you might know that I used to teach elementary school and I was a college professor for many years. So I tell my students the same things to make sure that they are learning and getting the most out of whatever it is that they're trying to learn. So I want to make sure before you get started in today's class, make sure you have eliminated any distractions. I know the phone is a big one, and I'm asking you to please turn it off or just put it aside during this online workshop. I know it's so easy to scroll through Instagram or want to check your email, but you're really doing yourself a disservice because you're not learning and absorbing all of the information that you're going to get here today. If you're on a desktop or laptop computer, make sure to close out of any windows. And if you're streaming any music or videos in the background, it could stop the process of this workshop. So to get the clearest picture and the best sound, make sure all of the windows are closed out. If for whatever reason you lose sound or the screen cuts out or freezes during the workshop, just simply refresh the screen and it should bring you right back to where you were. Finally, make sure you have a notebook or paper ready to take notes. During the editing videos, I'm going to be presenting you with a lot of information, and you may want to take notes on that so you can try it on your own later on today. And because you're investing in yourself and your education, I have some free gifts for you at the end of today's workshop. So if you stick around until the end, I'm going to tell you how you can get your portrait editing quick guide completely free. It's downloadable and printable, and it covers all the information we're going to be talking about in today's workshop, so you can reread, relearn, and rework some of those beautiful portraits you've taken in Photoshop or Lightroom. I'm also going to be telling you about my newest online e-course for editing portraits and telling you how you can get my free sharpening actions and my portrait retouching Photoshop action collection. Make sure to stick around till the end. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Emily Supio. This is me, and I am a mom to 4 wonderfully fantastic kids. They're all under the age of 10, and they're really my inspiration for wanting to get better at portrait photography. I am also a portrait photographer in the state of Arizona. And like I said before, I'm a former elementary school teacher and college professor. I'm also the blogger at Cozy Clicks, which is a photography blog full of free tutorials and articles for new and intermediate portrait photographers. So chances are you've probably read one of those articles on the Cozy Clicks blog already, and I'm guessing that's probably how you found me. I'm also branded by my 4 kids as being a weirdly positive person. So I try to be as positive as I can all the time, but a lot of times they think I'm a little odd. They think I'm a little weird. And these are my 4 kiddos. And like I said, they are the reason and my inspiration for really wanting to get better at portrait photography. And when my oldest, who's 10 now, was born, I wanted to capture like every moment, every milestone, everything he was doing. The thing was, I didn't even own a camera. So I had to borrow my dad's really old DSLR camera and learn everything I could about it and start to learn everything I could about the editing process. But when you have 4 kids like this, time becomes limited, I guess, to say the least. So a lot of the times I spent learning while they were napping or after they went to bed to really try to master taking portraits and editing portraits. Now, a lot of that time was spent in front of trusty YouTube. YouTube was a lifesaver because there were so many things on there that helped me really grow in my editing abilities. Now, the thing about YouTube and the thing about Google is that there's a problem there. It takes a lot of time to search and watch and read and find the things that really make sense. Find those videos that are really good and really apply to what you want to learn. And a lot of the times when I would watch these videos, even though some of them were great, a lot of them had incorrect information or bad information or outdated or just didn't fit the situation that I was looking for. And so going back to only having time to learn this when my kids were taking a nap, I wasted a lot of time just kind of searching through and trying to find the best resources for learning. And the thing was too, I would get answers to one solution when it came to editing, but it wasn't really a complete system. So I'd find one really great video that helped me with one photo, but it didn't really apply to the next photo that I was working on. So what I needed to do was try to come up with some kind of system that worked on every portrait that I was working on. Now, this was really overwhelming. And do you ever feel overwhelmed too when you sit down to edit a picture? Like there's so many buttons and sliders on these editing programs and you're just not sure where to even start. And it's the same thing when you get into Google or YouTube and you start searching for something. You can watch video after video and just feel so overwhelmed by the process and all this information that's out there. And going back to, it takes time. And it can take a lot of time and a lot of practice to find the right system and really get the right techniques down to see improvement in your portraits. Now, it did take me a lot of time to learn portrait editing and how to get pretty good at it. But once I did, it really paid off because I was able to be featured on some pretty big publications. I was also able to collaborate with a lot of really great photography brands, and I was asked to write educational articles for some pretty big blogs out there. Now, I want to help you eliminate some of the time it takes to learn portrait editing. And I know we're not sitting face to face right now, but I want you to tell me out loud or raise your hand. Do you want to feel confident in your editing? Say it out loud. If you want more confidence, just say yes. I want you to really feel it. And would it be nice for you to have a clear workflow? Raise your hand or tell me, do you want your workflow seamless and quick? And do you want to speed up the time it takes you to edit a portrait and still have it look awesome? So not only edit quickly, but edit efficiently and have it look great. Now, if you said yes to those questions, then you're definitely in the right place, because in this workshop, I'm going to teach you the system for editing portraits from start to finish. That is what you are going to learn today in the editing videos. So let's talk about that start. What is first when it comes to editing? And surprisingly enough, the very first thing doesn't have anything to do with Photoshop or Lightroom. The first thing you have to make sure of when you're editing a portrait is making sure that that image is well lit, exposed correctly, and is in focus. If you have those three things down, you're going to do so much better in the editing process. Let me take a look, and I want to show you just a couple examples of what your photos should look like if they're well lit, exposed, and in focus. Now, this first photo, this is not my photo. This is actually one of my students in a few of my e-courses, Heidi Delmeyer. And I want you to look at this photo of her little girl because I think it is so cute and adorable, but it also has great light. If you look on the face of this little girl, the light is very smooth and very flattering. There's not any heavy shadows or highlights on her face or under her neck or under her eyes. Her light is spot on in this photo. Now, this is another student of mine, Jennifer Corbin, and this is a picture she took of her mom, but her exposure is correct. It's fantastic in this portrait. It's not too dark, it's not too light. It's ready to be edited. And finally, this photo is from Lori Ben. Lori is another student in my online e-course, and I love this portrait here. And this photo is sharp and in focus. If your pictures are in focus, then they are ready to go and be brought into an editing program. Now, if you looked at some of those pictures and you thought, you know what, mine just aren't quite there yet, you may not be ready for the editing process yet. And I want to show you a couple examples now of not my students' work, but some of my own old photos that weren't quite there yet, because there was a time when I wasn't ready to start portrait editing. So if you look at these two pictures, these ones are not exposed correctly. So if you're not getting exposure correct, you can't bring these into Photoshop or Lightroom and think, I can fix them later. If they're not exposed correctly, they're either going to be too light or too dark, not in focus, or kind of grainy, like these ones. Here's another old shot of mine, and this one is just very unflattering in the light. You can see she's a cute girl, but her face has patches of really heavy highlights and shadows that are kind of falling around her nose that make it a little patchy in the darkness and lightness. It's just not a super flattering photo like in Heidi's photo that I showed you earlier, where the light was very smooth over her little girl's face. And finally, if your pictures are out of focus, you cannot fix them in the editing process. And I put this photo up on the left of the little girl purposefully because that actually was a photo I took just a couple months ago. So I still miss focus now. And you can see she's out of focus. My focus actually hit in the background. So even if I loved this picture, I couldn't save it. I couldn't bring it into my editing system and make it work. It has to be in focus from the beginning. All right, so I want you to really think about your own work before we get into these editing videos. Do you have portraits that are well exposed, well lit, and in focus? If you do, most of the time, you are ready to dive into these editing videos and really take your portraits to the next level. If as you watch some of these photos, you thought, you know what, my lighting just isn't even there yet, I'm not getting focus a lot of the time, or I'm just not really understanding light yet, then these videos may not be for you just yet. But if you keep practicing, I know you'll get there. All right, let me switch over the screen and we're going to start the editing process. All right, so I have the portrait that we're going to work on pulled up into ACR, which is Adobe Camera Raw. Now, Adobe Camera Raw is very, very, very similar to Lightroom. Both ACR and Lightroom are part of that Adobe Creative Cloud package. So if you are working in that Adobe Creative Cloud, you get both of these things, so you can kind of play around and see which one you like better. My preference has always tended to go toward the ACR, the Adobe Camera Raw. So that's what I'm going to work in right here. But if you are a Lightroom user, these same exact techniques, sliders, and buttons that we're going to work on can be used in Lightroom. So same exact things can be used in both ACR and Lightroom. So the very first thing that I look at is my exposure correct? Now, if you shot your photo in RAW format, which I highly recommend, you can make adjustments to your exposure in Lightroom or ACR. So if you're shooting JPEG, you may want to switch over to RAW today and see the difference that this makes. And you're going to learn the techniques that you can edit in RAW, so you'll know exactly what to do. So when I take a look at the exposure of this photo, I can already tell that it's slightly underexposed. It's a little bit dark, and I'm just by looking at it, eyeballing the photo. But I can also double check that by going up to the upper right-hand side and looking at my histogram. Now, a nicely exposed photo will show this curve with most of the curve falling right in the middle. This one tends to fall to the left, which is telling me that my exposure is a little bit dark. To fix that, you just take your exposure slider and watch what happens as I drag it to the right. You'll see that the photo gets lighter, but my histogram also moves too, moving most of the curve into the middle. Now, some of the time the curve won't look exactly like this. If you have a bright sky in the background, you'll notice that there will be some values of your histogram that fall way to the right, and that's okay too. Use that histogram as a guide to help you pinpoint the best exposure. So now that I dragged that slider over for the exposure, it instantly already looks better. It's brighter, it's on point, it looks more fresh and glowing. Now, the second thing that you want to make sure is correct is your white balance. And this will go back to making sure that you have shot in RAW format, because when you do, you can easily fix the white balance in Lightroom or ACR. So what you can do is you can try to get white balance correct in camera, and you can do that in a few ways. You can use an Expo disc, you can use Kelvin, you can use a gray card, but sometimes you might forget to set your white balance, or you might just set it on auto and it doesn't set it correctly, or you can try to just fix it in post later, like I'm going to show you here. I am going to send you an email with a few links to some great resources where I share with you exactly how to use an Expo disc and a gray card, so that you can watch those later if you're still a little unsure how to get your white balance set. So I will send those to you after the workshop today. But if you're going to do it in camera, what you can do is you can grab the white balance tool, which is right up here at the top. It looks like a dropper. In Lightroom, it's over on this side to the top. So in ACR, the white balance tool is right there. It says white balance tool. In Lightroom, it will be to the right-hand side, but it will still look like a dropper just like this. Now, we're going to want to find an area on our portrait that is neutral. So you might look for a neutral white area or a gray, or a lot of times I just tap in the whites of the eyes. So if there's not really a nice neutral area you're finding, using the eye whites generally will help. So I'm going to sample a couple areas, and when I do that, you'll see that this temperature slider on the right hand side is going to change. So I shot this in auto white balance, and it gave me a temperature of 4600. Let's see what happens when I sample a few areas. So if I click here, that brings my temperature up to 5250, which is a little warmer than I shot it at. Let me just sample another area here, right in her eyes. That's 5150, so pretty close. Let me try one more area just to make sure that that's a good range. Now, when I tap in this one, it does bring it up a little higher, 5500. So if I take an average of those three samples, I would move that temperature slider down just a bit, and maybe I'll keep it at 5250. Now, that really warms up the image. So now we have 1, corrected the exposure, and 2, adjusted our white balance. And already I can see a nice change. It looks warm, it looks bright, it looks golden. It really changed it around just by doing those 2 things. I will show you the before and the after when we're finished with this. The third thing that you're going to do in your editing system for portraits is work with the HSL tabs, the hue, saturation, and luminance, to really brighten up the skin. Now, you can find that both in ACR and on Lightroom on this right-hand panel over here. So you're going to find where it says HSL, and right here it's going to be the 4th one over on ACR. In Lightroom, you're going to go down to find the HSL, but you're going to click on that. And we're going to be focusing on this orange slider here. So the first one that I love, I think this is like a magic trick when I do this, is working with the luminance. And we're working once again with the orange slider, and I generally pull it to the right because I think that brightens it up. However, depending on the skin tone, you might decide to pull it the other way. But either way you work this orange slider, the cool thing is it's going to focus right on the skin of your subject. So watch this. As I pull this orange slider to the right, the skin of my subject starts to get very bright. Okay, now that's a little too bright. I have it pulled all the way over, but you can see that targeted just the areas and the toning of her skin. Pretty cool, huh? Watch when I pull it over the other way. So once again, I'm on the luminance tab, orange slider, and I'm going to pull that all the way over to my left. Now it really darkened up the skin. That doesn't look super pleasing, I know, but what I want to show you is the rest of the photo was not really affected. It targeted just her skin, which is awesome at correcting skin tones and either darkening the skin or lightening the skin up a bit. So depending on your subject and the natural toning of the skin, you're going to want to either brighten or darken just a bit with this luminance slider. I tend to like to go a little brighter. I think it gives an overall glow to the skin. And this works no matter what tone the original skin is. You just might have to pull it up or down a little bit different. I'm going to put her at about 12, but like I keep saying, depending on the person, depending on the skin tone, that number is going to change for you. Now, the second part of this HSL tip is to go into the saturation. Here, I'm going to take the orange slider, but this time I'm going to pull it to the left. That's going to take out any orangey or red undertones in the skin. Now, once again, you don't want to overdo it. If you go down too far, what's going to happen is they're going to look like a Halloween character. She looks kind of ghostly here. So you don't want to go down too far. You just want to go bring it down a very subtle amount. And what I usually tell people with any part of their editing, with any slider they're working with or button they're working with, get it to a point where you think it looks good, but then drop it back a little bit. And that's going to ensure that it doesn't look super fake or overdone. So right here, I have the saturation at -8. Like I said before, depending on the person, your subject, their original skin tones that you're working with, that number could change. And then finally, we're going to go into hue, sticking with that orange slider again. And this time, you're going to bring it to the right. So I'm just going to bring that over to the right, and that does a nice job just brightening her up a little bit. So once again, in that HSL tab with the luminance selected, orange slider, the luminance will generally go to the right. Your saturation, you're going to move that orange slider to the left, and for the hue, you're going to move that orange slider to the right. Once again, I want to reiterate, depending on the original skin tone of your subject, your numbers will be different. So you're going to want to play around with that and see what looks best for your subject. The fourth and final thing I'm going to look at in ACR or Lightroom before we move into Photoshop is making sure that we have a crisp, clear, and sharp image, and we can add a little more sharpness in ACR or Lightroom. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here to the sharpening tab, which is the third one over, or it says detail. So it might say detail if you are in Lightroom, but it is going to be on this right hand side. So with the detail selected, we're going to sharpen our photo just a little bit. And I like to actually increase or zoom into my photo quite a bit so I can really look at how much sharpening I'm doing. Now it looks like the sharpening fell on this, or the focus fell on this side of her face. So this eye is really the one I'm going to be looking at to make sure that it's not over sharp. But I'm going to take that first sharpening slider and I'm going to start bringing it over, and you can see as I do that, I mean, I can bring it over quite a bit, but I'm going to start to get a lot more grain in here, so I don't want to overdo it. I might bring this one, I think 60 looks pretty good on that one. And I'm going to keep the sharpening right there. Now I also like to adjust the clarity. So I'm going to go back to the basic one, the very first button here that we were working with the temperature and exposure. And I'm going to go down to my clarity. Now by adjusting this slider and moving it to the right, we're going to get a more clear or more clarity in our picture. So let me move it all the way so you can see what happens if it's all the way over to the right. That's a little bit too much, but if you just bring it over slightly, that's going to bring in more clarity, and now we have a clear, sharp photo. So let's decrease that again so you can see we've got some nice sharpness in our portrait. And I have already been able to see such a change in this portrait already just doing those four things. Let's take a peek at the before and after of this photo so you can see what those four things did to make such a change in this portrait already. So here it is, here's our original, and there it is already with those four steps we just did. Now, once you get the hang of it and you start practicing, to do these four steps is very, very quick. It will save you so much time, and look at the dramatic difference between these two photos. Now, what's super cool are the tricks that I'm going to teach you in Photoshop. So once you're ready to bring it into Photoshop, that's where the magic can truly begin with photo editing. So let me bring that over into Photoshop and I will show you some really cool tricks over there. Pulled up into Photoshop now. And I love working in Photoshop. I think that's truly where things happen with the editing piece of photos. Now, Photoshop can be kind of overwhelming. I do get that. There's all of these buttons over here on the left. There's all the tabs up on the top and these numbers and these pull down menus, and it can be kind of confusing. But when you know what to focus on, when you know which ones to use when it comes to portrait editing, it becomes relaxing and fun, and you can be a lot more creative with your images. So Photoshop, I think, is fantastic. And this next piece that I'm going to show you here is a great way to add instant glow to any portrait, regardless of the age of your subject or the gender or the skin tones of your subject. I think it does a fantastic job making your subject glow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the bottom right hand corner, and you'll see this circle that's like half gray, half white. You're going to click on that, and you're going to select a levels adjustment layer. So I'm here and I pick levels. Now, when I do that, I'm going to have a box that pops up here with my histogram. I'm going to be focusing on this white triangle here at the right-hand side of my histogram. Now, if I click on that white triangle and I pull it toward the left, you'll see what happens to my photo is that it's instantly bright. If you pull it over too much, you can see what's happening is that the highlights are becoming way too bright. So we don't want that. We want to start by just bringing it over a little bit. And I actually think that that might be a little too much because I'm seeing a lot of brightness there on my subject. Now, what that did was it brightened our whole image, and we don't want that. We want to focus right in on our subject. So I'm going to come back down to this levels layer. I'm going to click on the layer mask here to make sure that's highlighted, okay, because we're going to be working there. And I'm going to invert this levels layer. So I don't want it showing. So I'm going to hit Control, or if you're on a Mac, you'll hit Command and then I, and that inverts it. So now we have it back where we started again. But if you grab a brush that is white, so I'm going to set my brush to white. I'm going to make sure that it is soft. So I've got this hardness all the way down to 0, and I'm going to bring the size down a little bit too. We can paint on the areas of the skin or the hair to give it an extra glow. So I'm going to get out of that brush area, bring my brush up a little bit, and I'm just going to start painting on the skin of my subject. You can see it's almost like she's glowing. So I'm going to go around just to the skin areas. And you can adjust the size of your brush. You can take your time with this more if you want to. I found you don't have to be incredibly accurate here because the soft brush will help that glow blend in nicely to the background, but you do want to be somewhat careful. You could even bring it into the hair if you want the hair to have a little extra glow if you want to. Now, just like I said earlier, I thought it was a little bit too much, and we're going to double check that right now. So I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to click on this levels histogram. Now, when I look at this white triangle here, I see it's too far into the curve of the histogram. You see, if I were to take this and just draw a line up, we're getting into the curve. That means that there are some areas of the skin that are too bright. So I do have to drag that back over, and I'm going to drag it over right to the end of that curve. Not to the very end of the rectangle, but to the end of the curve. And that's showing me that none of my areas are clipped or too bright, but it is the perfect brightness and glowiness for the skin tone of that subject. So let's take a look. Let's turn it off and let's turn it on, and it's just like an instant glow to the skin, like they have on a new moisturizer or lotion that really added that nice glow. This Photoshop tip for editing portraits is one of my favorites because it is so easy and it is so effective. Now, these 5 steps should give you a great framework to take your portrait editing from start to finish. But I do know a lot more cool tricks in Photoshop to really take your portraits to the next level. Let me explain. Okay, so I hope you're feeling right now like, yes, this is exciting. I want to try some of these techniques out on my own portraits in Photoshop. But you also might be thinking, I want more. I want to learn even more about how to edit my portraits and have a system for editing them. Or you might be thinking that you really just want full control over your editing on every single portrait you take. And if you want to create consistency and style when you edit your images, then I have just the course for you. My e-course for portrait photographers who want control of their portrait editing is The Perfect Portrait. This e-course teaches you a system for editing portraits from start to finish. So no more searching through YouTube trying to find exactly what you want to do to get your portraits looking right. This course covers it from beginning to end and helps you so you can apply these techniques on every picture you take. So what's inside the e-course, The Perfect Portrait? Well, it's 7 very easy to follow modules with video tutorials included too. It will help you prepare your raw file in ACR or Lightroom, and then really help you perfect that portrait in Photoshop. This course really focuses a lot on skin, which I know is a huge issue for a lot of portrait photographers out there. This course focuses on toning, so getting those tones correct for all skin shades, helps you with learning how to soften the skin and creating dimension. So you can add in a very subtle dimension or learn how to create a painterly look to your photos. You're also going to learn more about how to work with the face. So you're going to know how to brighten, darken, and sharpen the eyes, create rosy cheeks, add color to the lips, create shine to the lips, and create shiny, contrasty hair. Now, what you'll create by enrolling in The Perfect Portrait, you will create consistency in your work because, like I said, this course teaches you a system, so you'll be doing similar steps to every portrait. And because your work is going to get more consistent, you're going to have more confidence and develop a workflow that works for you. And you're going to create time for yourself because you're not going to be searching up how to do things on YouTube anymore. You're going to know exactly what to do. Now, I know a lot of you might have some questions, and I want to cover some of the more common questions right here. So first, you might be wondering, what editing programs do I need to take The Perfect Portrait? And like I said earlier, the Adobe Creative Cloud is what I recommend. This gives you the most updated version of Photoshop, Lightroom, and ACR all together. So that's going to give you the best results if you have that program. Now, if you're running an older version of Photoshop, many of the steps you'll be able to complete. If you're working with Photoshop Elements, some of the steps you'll be able to complete. So my recommendation would be to have that Adobe Creative Cloud, the most updated version, to get the most out of this course. You might wonder, when can I take the course? Well, as soon as you enroll and sign up, you are a registered student and you can get right into the modules. You can get right into those video tutorials and you can start applying what you're learning on your images today if you want. You can take the course in the daytime. You can take it in the middle of the night. If you're a night owl, you can take this course in your pajamas or, sitting outside with your laptop if you want to. So you have complete access to the course as soon as you register, and you can watch the videos at any time. Now, if you get stuck for whatever reason while you're watching the video tutorials, I do have help for you. You will also get access to the Cozy Clicks support group on Facebook, which is a virtual classroom full of students like you that are enrolled in the course. Plus, I'm in there too to help you, and I'm in there quite a bit. I have students that have been in this support group for over a year who have completed the course and have gone on to create some really magical work. And they're in there a lot, still helping out the new students who enroll all the time in this course. So it's a really great small group of photographers that are very non-threatening and happy to work with you and help you. Now, this is not my private Facebook group. for everybody. You might be in that photography, support, learn, and inspire with Cozy Clicks. That one is open for everybody, and that has over 20,000 people in it. And I know it can be kind of intimidating. So the group that's connected with this course is the course support, and it's a lot less intimidating of a group. You might be thinking, okay, so I'm not super good with technology. What am I going to need to get into this course? And you don't need to be great with technology. You do need a computer or laptop or your tablet or phone. You also will need a high-speed internet to watch the courses. And that's it. You might wonder, aren't Photoshop Actions just quicker? And they are. Photoshop Actions, I think, are great. I'm not going to lie. I create Photoshop Actions. I sell Photoshop Actions, and I think they're fantastic. But what I think is more fantastic is understanding how to do these steps yourself. Because while Actions are great, they don't give you as much control as if you know how to do it on your own. You will have so much more consistency and so much more control when you understand Photoshop, when you understand your portrait, and when you can apply them on your own. So while Photoshop Actions are great and quick, and I would recommend even trying some out, the best results will be from when you've learned on your own and you know how to do it on your own. Okay, now I know this is in everyone's mind, but how much will this course cost? So I have two different options for you, and this is the first time I have offered a payment plan before, but you can start today for only $99, and then just 2 more payments of $99 after that, or you can dive in with one payment of $197, and that's it. So if you want to enroll, you can. Right to the side of your screen, you'll see 3 little dots over there that you can just click, and that opens up so that you can enroll right now in the perfect portrait. You can also enroll by going to cozyclicks.com/PP. That's PP for perfect portrait. And you have access to the cool bonuses that I have attached to this course. So like I said, you have access to that private Facebook group for students only. That in itself is a huge value because you are working with and talking with real photographers that are just like you, that are going through the Cozy Clicks courses. I'm there to help you out too so that you can succeed. You're also going to get a set of my Photoshop sharpening actions, which I do not sell these anywhere. This is just a bonus for people enrolled in the course. These actions are awesome to run when you're finished editing your photo so they're sharp and clear and ready for either web use or for print. I'm also going to give you my portrait editing Photoshop actions, which is helpful and does include some of the steps you'll learn in the course. But like I said before, it should not be a substitute for what you learn here. It'll help you out with a really good start, and then the course is going to take it to the next level. These portrait editing actions are over in my shop for $49. You're going to get them totally free when you enroll. I also have lots of surprise goodies that are attached to all of my courses, and there will be some in the modules at the end of this course for you too. So I would love if you would enroll and register. I would love to have you in the perfect portrait so you can really get control of your editing and learn a system so that your work is consistent. Thank you so much for taking the time today to listen to the workshop. And even if you don't join me over in the perfect portrait, I know you've learned something that can set you up for success with what we learned in the Learn Portrait Editing workshop today. Now make sure you check your email for the free portrait editing quick guide that I talked about earlier. That's going to cover all the steps that we talked about in today's workshop. Sometimes my emails might get sent to your spam box, so if you don't see it in the next hour, just make sure to check over there, and it might have made its way over in your spam box. This quick guide is super easy for you to download and print, and it's only available to you because you attended the workshop today and valued your education. Thank you again. I so appreciate that you are here today. And if you would like to enroll in the Perfect Portrait, you can by going to cozyclicks.com/PP. That's PP for Perfect Portrait. There's also a link right to the side of the screen, so you might see those 3 little dots over there. If you click those, it'll open up the screen so you can register right here today. I'd love to have you over there. Thanks again.